All right, welcome back to another episode, another season of Tigers Win, second season of Tigers Win, and very excited to have LSU Soccer coach Sian Hudson on. Coach, thank you for your time today. Thank you for
Thanks
your patience. As I was late getting over here, let's be honest. The weather slowed me down a little bit, but I appreciate your patience and your time and getting to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
So we spoke a year ago before you started the season, and you were just about to get started here at LSU. In a context that I don't think most coaches would want to start their careers at a new school at. It's all SEC schedule. It's COVID. There's restrictions. It's anything but ordinary and anything but the plan that you would write. And we talked about your vision for the program, and I was sold instantly. Now, maybe it's the soccer fan in me, but you talked about playing a style where you keep the ball and you move the ball, and the SEC is such an athletic and direct league, but you wanted to do things a little bit differently. And I was both in love with the vision and wondering, okay, how long will it take for that to come into place? So before we talk about this year, and y'all are off to a 7-0 start, and number 7 in the country, and everyone's watching now and enraptured by the success you're having, I want to go back to that time frame. You have this vision. That's important. You have to have vision. But how do you sell your vision to your team? Mm-hmm. And how do you get them to start executing your vision?
Yeah, I think first and foremost it starts with communication. And I think we had a group that were just hungry for change. And, the first thing I have to say is the players welcomed the new staff and the new ideas. I think there's always a period of time where you have to convince people of what that vision looks like and how we're going to take those small steps in order to arrive at that, not necessarily final destination, but to get to the point where we can execute that on the field. So first and foremost, I think the players were hungry for change. And I think obviously having assistant coaches that I had worked with previously was really important to me coming in, just from the standpoint of being able to execute that vision really quickly across the staff as a whole. We did a lot of work, obviously, early on. It was incredibly challenging to be able to execute this vision with a team that we couldn't even be around when the players had to go home for the pandemic. And some were overseas, some were, obviously in other areas of the country.
For context, you were hired in January of 2020?
Yeah, we started with the team.
2 months later.
Yeah, I think we had about 6 weeks with them here in person. And obviously some of that I was spent on the road recruiting. And then they were all packed off to go home. Mm-hmm. And then you have to get creative in that space. And how can we continue to push forward with instilling our beliefs as a staff during a time where we couldn't even be around the players. So we came up with this idea to build a website platform where it would basically be an online coaching tool using the last Women's World Cup games. And we used all of our, fancy technology that we have here with spotlights and voiceovers. And we created this online sort of coaching platform where the players could go on and, regardless of what formation we were playing, learn how we were going to attack and defend within that formation.
Unbelievable.
So that was something that we put a lot of time and effort into last spring as a staff. And I don't think any of us had ever built a website before.
That's what I was about to say. Were you coding? Were you typing up the HTML code?
Hey, you just have to get creative in times. And I think as much as the players initially were like, oh my gosh, I have to do another online class,
sure,
a soccer class. I think just being able to get our terminology, our soccer language, our approach across during that time where maybe a lot of other schools were not really doing much, gave us the ability to come in preseason, in the summer and into the fall especially, with a certain level of our philosophy in
sure,
place. And then obviously we had that sort of 6-week period in the fall where were we going to have a season? Are we not having a season? We lost all of our non-conference games. So to go into a tough SEC stretch and sort of be trying to implement that vision in an SEC level competition, we always knew it was going to take a handful of games just to get going.
Yeah. What did those classes look like? Is it a video and then a quiz? And what were the requirements? Did they have to take X amount of classes per week? What? I'm curious. Beyond the actual physical coding and building of a website, what it looked like practically for them to go through.
Yeah, I think everything was built around a video. I think, student athletes these days are so visual. They're online all the time. And so we clipped the video, we spotlighted, we used arrows with all of our technology, and then we voiced over in terms of how we were going to coach that. Mm-hmm. So obviously it was, the world's best playing the game, but it was our voice. It was our terminology.
So a lot of Arsenal clips, right?
No Arsenal
on what
clips
not to do.
But no, I think that went a long way in terms of showing the players that we are going to have a very detailed approach to the way that we attack and defend. It gave them the ability in maybe a non-pressurized setting at home to go back in and relook at those things time and time again. But we typically presented that in a Zoom setting with the team, and then we obviously gave them the password information to go in and just rewatch it. Some people learn right away and are able to apply really quickly, and others just need that additional time. And even to this day, we still use that in some of our presentations now. But I think one of the things that I believe strongly in is being tactically diverse. And so we built out every single formation that we may play, so they can go in times where we change for different opponents. They can go in and just have that ability to relearn. So it was all video based, and then there was quizzes for a check for understanding.
So you mentioned being tactically diverse, and then also sort of the early part of last season. You go in and you're playing an all SEC schedule. You're in year one. You haven't had time to necessarily recruit players. You sort of inherit a team, and you haven't been given the time to physically be there with them. But you've adapted and you've come up with a plan. And I remember watching y'all early last year, and I've watched LSU Soccer for a few years, and instantly you could see exactly what you were trying to do. Like, I'm a soccer fan. I know a little bit about the game, but I think even people who don't know soccer that well could see they're trying to do something different and play differently. And it was like baby steps, or it was like watching something develop to where every game you could see the improvement, you could see the buy-in, and the results just weren't there. And so I was sitting there worried internally, like, man, I can see what they're trying to do. This is the right way to go about it. But I'm worried that if they don't get the positive reinforcement of a win and a result, that, maybe they'll lose belief, or maybe it won't connect. Now, the results eventually came, and we'll talk about that in a second. But, maybe I'm channeling Ted Lasso here, but how did you get them to believe in those moments when here's what I'm selling, here's the vision that I have, the results aren't there yet, but I promise you they're coming. How did you get them to believe that?
Well, I'm a sports psychology major, and so I believe really strongly in goal setting. And so even though we talked about the long-term vision, we had a lot of short-term goals that we had set for the team. So even in moments where maybe the outcome wasn't favorable in terms of the scoreline, we could see that each game we were growing in terms of being able to accomplish some of the shorter-term goals. Mm-hmm. And then I think with anything in life, there has to be a balance. We spend a lot of time off the field together, really working on our relationships and just sort of those connections that we have. And so even in times where maybe the performance results weren't coming, you could see that the connections and the relationships that the girls were building behind the scenes were so much more meaningful to them and deeper, and they genuinely enjoyed being around each other off the field and then stepping on the training field and learning the game at a really high level and learning more about each other. And I think now that we've been able to navigate the performance piece and you see all of that come together, it definitely feels good. Mm-hmm. And you can sort of see the result of that and how they compete for each other on the field.
So I want to get to the turning point and the results and those coming and really now piling up. But before that, you mentioned the team bonding and the building of connections. And I remember this fall y'all posted on the Twitter account some photos of a retreat that y'all had done. Mm-hmm. And so I'd love to hear the story behind that specifically, but also how intentional you are about trying to develop that team chemistry and what unique ways you try to do that, whether it's a retreat of some sort at a remote location or even on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think throughout my career, I've been very intentional about team trips, team retreats, culture building. One of my favorite lines is culture eats talent for breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important to get to know each other at a human level, before we talk about the performance side. So obviously last year was incredibly challenging with the pandemic and the inability to be in a space like this for longer than 15 minutes and how you are supposed to build relationships when you're behind a mask or not allowed to be in the same space was really difficult. But we went to a retreat. Lindsay Balconi, one of my assistant coaches, who we've worked together previously in Colorado, ran the whole show there. And it's essentially a way that you can build trust. You have to be vulnerable, I believe, in order to build trust. And how you build trust off the field, I think, resonates with what you can do on the field. So we do a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun together, activities, whether that is how you navigate an obstacle course and the communication skills that you need in order to be able to communicate as a group or a team, I think is really important. But for me, it's about, can you enjoy being in the same space as somebody? Can we have conversations at a human level? And then how does that translate on the field? So we do a lot of team building activities, listening to each other's experiences, I think is so important and so powerful. And just learning to respect each other and sort of everybody's background, I think is so important, especially for coaches, and then learning how to motivate each individual and how to get the best out of them.
So I want to go to the turning point now, and if I can do it quickly enough, I want to pull up a text message that I had sent you last year after y'all's first win, because we had talked and I was engaged and watching, and just every game, like it felt like I kept getting closer and closer and closer, and then something crazy would happen or some little mistake would blow up, and y'all finally got the result. And this is from November 13th. I don't even remember who y'all beat. I'm sure you do off the top of your head. Who was that first one?
Alabama.
Okay, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I should remember that. But I just texted you and said, I'll just read it here. I hope you don't mind.
No.
So Coach Hudson, I enjoyed our conversation on Zoom for the story several weeks back. I've enjoyed watching your team this season just as much. The culture you're building has been evident all year long. You didn't need to win to prove it to anyone who's watched, but you did deserve a win to celebrate the work you and your team have put in. Congratulations on the first of many. So thrilled for you and your staff and your team. I said the first of many. I didn't expect exactly what happened after that, and we'll get to that in a second. That game, what did that mean to finally see that work pay off and just give us the context behind that win as well?
Yeah, we had gone down to College Station to play A&M in our final SEC game in the regular season. And even though we lost 2-1, we came out of that game, I think, knowing that performance gave us belief going into the SEC tournament that we could get a result against anyone. And I think that for me, when we drove to Orange Beach, there was just a sense of, I think, excitement that it was a clean start going into the SEC tournament, because I think just not having had a win in the regular season probably did weigh heavy on all of us. But going into the SEC tournament with sort of a clean start, a clean slate, so to speak, there was just an excitement of, this is it, now it's our opportunity to do something special. And I think I could just feel the momentum sort of shifting on the drive home from College Station, heading to Orange Beach. And in that game against Alabama, I don't think any player, any staff member ever believed that there was going to be anything other than success. And obviously, Taylor Douglas scored a couple of goals for us, and it was a really big moment. And I think just you watch the celebrations after the game, and I think there was definitely a sense of relief for sure. But as we sort of prepared then going into the Ole Miss game, I think the group genuinely believed, there's certainly the girls that were here in 2018 when they won the SEC tournament, that we could do it again. And I think just having to play 3 games in 5 days and playing A&M on that 5th day when they were fresh coming in, it was their first game. It was just a lot physically at that point in time. But even in that game, we lost 1-0. And I thought that at times, for large periods of that game, we were the better team, and we could have maybe scored a goal and the game could have gone differently. But driving home from Orange Beach and having our end of season player meetings, I mean, it was just a sense of, we had come through this journey together. We had overcome so many different obstacles, and just the excitement looking ahead to the spring, even at that point in the fall. And it had been a long fall, was there, and you could just sense that the girls were hungry, and that the desire was there to come in and do what we did in the spring.
Yep. So there's two sides to every coin, and so the difficult part of the fall schedule was you got to play all SEC games, and we haven't had any time together. But that fortifies you, and then you get the spring schedule that's a little more expanded, right, than it would have normally been, and you're able to carry that momentum over rather than going from a fall season to, I know there's usually a shorter spring season that's maybe a couple games, but you were able to get a longer extended one and really keep that momentum going and breed this familiarity and this and just everything that clicked in that Alabama game. It all just, I mean, it was like a platform from which you guys launched. So what was it like to watch that evolution? And Aaron's sitting over there. I don't remember the exact record, but I know y'all just got hot and maybe finished, I don't know, 6-2 with maybe one loss in there and a couple draws and like 6 wins maybe. That's off the top of my head. I don't know. 6-1-1. So I was close. That's not bad off the top of my head. Thank you, Aaron. But just a really good spring to take what you had built in the fall, not have to wait a year and just keep building.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to the girls and the work that they put in the off season. Renee Balconi, our strength and conditioning coach, does a phenomenal job with them in the off season, where they come back ready to compete and not necessarily just resting over the winter period. So we were able to hit the ground running in the spring in terms of tactically where we left off in the fall, and then obviously physically, I just I look at us at the moment as a group, and I don't think there's really one component of the game that we're lacking. I think physically we look so fit, and that's certainly credit to Renee. But when I think about the spring, I think we spent a lot of time in the fall trying to figure out our identity and who could we become from a tactical standpoint. I think the attacking philosophy was in place in terms of we want to keep the ball, but we didn't necessarily have all of the tools in order to play this sort of free-flowing attacking style. And so in the spring, we maybe shifted our emphasis a little bit more to being really organized defensively and difficult to break down. And then how could we hit teams on the counterattack? And while we didn't score a huge number of goals in the spring, I think we didn't concede very many. And I think we were able to maintain possession of the ball for large periods of games. And I think that continued to bring belief. And we did. We had a lot of success. Obviously, we beat Florida, I think, for the first time in 10 years. And then followed that up with 2 big wins in Texas against Baylor and Texas Tech. And so I think the players just left the spring season knowing that we could beat anybody, on our day. And if we continued to believe in the vision and what we were trying to execute on the field tactically, that it was going to be a fun and exciting fall.
You don't need me to tell you this, but if you want to endear yourself with LSU fans, beating Alabama and beating Florida is a very good start that will win over a lot of people. So you mentioned the physical conditioning of this team, and I was fortunate enough to go watch a little practice this morning in the indoor, and that really stood out to me. I've been watching you guys on TV this year. I'll be out there Friday for the Mississippi State game. But being there up close in person, watching y'all practice, it was the intensity, it was the physical intensity. I told you this before we started recording. I kind of expected to come in and we're going to kick the ball around a little bit and stay healthy for Mississippi State and just have kind of a, maybe more of a mental practice than a physical practice. And I was dead wrong. I mean, y'all were getting after it. It was physical. It was competitive. It was spirited, hard challenges, but really instilling that mentality in the team. And so I want to talk about that mentality and the shift from the spring where you did, create defensive solidity and try to hit teams on the counter. And now this year, I mean, y'all are scoring goals left and right. And just how you shifted that tactical approach, that mental approach, and then the connection with what I saw in practice today, that spirit and competitiveness that y'all really seem to have grasped.
Yeah, I think it's really important to train at a higher level than you're ever asked to compete, because when pressure comes and we know that, that takes a little bit out of you in terms of your emotional energy. And so we always talk about, can we train harder than we're going to be asked to compete? So competing, we're in our sort of flow mindset and our flow zone. So yeah, you're always going to see tackles flying around at training. It's always going to be sort of energetic, enthusiastic, upbeat. But the girls are definitely getting after it this morning, which was great to see. I think they're so excited to open SEC play against Mississippi State on Friday. And For us, it's about a mentality. There are so many good players in this league, but I think we always talk about be the 3%. Can you be sort of have that elite mentality of making yourself better with every single action and every single time you come out to training. And I think this morning we certainly left the field a better team and better individuals because of the effort. And sort of the collective effort that we're willing to put in. It's not just about can I make myself better, but can I make my teammate next to me better by the effort and the work rate and the attitude that I have each day that I show up.
Where did the goal scoring and the creativity come from? Because especially with the road trip that y'all just had and y'all knocked off ranked team after ranked team and went from unranked to 17th in the polls to 7, and y'all were just banging in goals left and right. Where did that come from? Where did that unlocking come from? Because it went from very defensively solid, but keeping, y'all did a good job of keeping the ball and moving it around last year, but just the final third, that's the hardest thing to add on, I imagine. And then now this year, like I was watching some clips from the ULL game, and y'all had a few combinations in midfield. I mean, just one touch, and then broke free. And it was really, really beautiful and entertaining to watch. Where did that step go from? How did you create that step from solidity to fluidity?
Well, I think first and foremost, development of our current group that we had last year. I think Laura Busby, one of my assistants, has put in a huge amount of work in terms of ball striking and being able to hit different types of shots and finishes with the group. And so I think we've seen an evolution maybe in the group that we had last year in terms of their ability to finish. And then we've obviously been able to supplement that with some key transfers that have come in and just sort of raised maybe the belief in our attacking unit. They've been able to add a couple of really critical components for us. And then you have some special talents like a Tanea Alexander who's able to, unlock any defense in moments. And I think it's just all sort of come together here in the first few weeks of the season. Obviously, I wanted to put a schedule together at the beginning of this season with exhibitions and non-conference games where we could get off and running in front of the goal and be really attack-minded. So I think scoring a lot of goals early on in our exhibition series was huge for self-belief and just confidence. And it's just sort of, gathered momentum from there.
So one of the, in addition to the success you're having and how it impacts team morale, it also impacts perception. And that's the perception of the fan, that's the perception of the public, but it's also the perception of recruits. And I know that that's the lifeblood of any program. How are you seeing the success you're having already here at LSU and with the LSU Soccer program translating on the recruiting trail? Because I know you've been out recruiting hard. What's the feedback you're getting?
Yeah, it's definitely been a shift for sure. Seb Furness, my assistant, and I, we're on the road this weekend, and he's done a phenomenal job since we got here of sort of pouring his time and energy into sort of developing relationships in the region for us, and certainly internationally as well as domestically. And I think we're certainly starting to see a change in sort of attention from some of the top tier recruits across the country. So that's been really nice to see, and had a couple of questions from recruits on the phone over the last few days about where Louisiana is. And so for our West Coast targets, we're certainly starting to help educate them on not just, what our beautiful state has to offer here in LSU, but also about the SEC in general. And we want to be a part of growing the league and growing the game here in Louisiana. And I think that anytime you have success, it's certainly going to bring a lot of attention. So Seb does a fantastic job with that. He handles a lot of that for us. And that's definitely something that we want to use this momentum that we're on at the moment and the success that we're having, not just for the current team, but obviously for the success and longevity of the program.
You mentioned earlier being the 3%, and that reminds me of the crest that you unveiled before the season. And identity, and it's something I think about all the time, and core values. It's something we're working on as an athletic department. How important was that for you to have that crest, that symbol? I mean, first of all, it looks good. Like, it's just aesthetically pleasing, but there's real meaning behind it and real belief and unity behind it. For those who aren't familiar with it, if you could just break it down and what each component means and then how it connects to your identity as a program.
Yeah, I've always been a huge sort of proponent of you have to know where you've come from in order to know where you're going, and you has to be sort of rooted in traditions and your culture. And so for me, when I look at a crest, and this is our old one, by the way.
Maybe we can edit it in post to get the new one up there.
But when I look at a crest, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's something that you wear on your heart. And so it has to be something that you're completely passionate about and something that you believe in. We wanted to go from the tiger eye to the tiger head because we want to be known as a fierce and aggressive team. And I think the tiger head is just such a symbolic sort of mark. And then we wanted to have the two fleur-de-lis represent passion and pride. We want to be prideful in everything that we do. Every time we take the field, we want to represent our university at a high level, and we want to represent our team and our teammates and our individuals and our family. And then the passion, I think, that you see us play with, that competitive edge, that mentality, that togetherness is something that represents us at a really high level. And the stripes on the crest represent our 5 core values of growth, effort, attitude, unity, and excellence. The go symbol, and the 4 stripes, there's 5 gold, 4 purple, represent the 4 pillars of the game and how we want to be excellent, and we want to be in tune with all components of the game, the technical, tactical, physical, and psychological.
So let's talk about the psychological, because you mentioned getting your team in a flow state earlier. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a fascination with flow, or being in the moment, or being in the zone, right? How critical is that to get your team in that mind space, and how do you do it? Like, what are your techniques and tactics for getting them in that collective? I call it a flow state. Some people call it being in the zone, whatever you would call it. Getting them in that mind space to perform at their absolute best and optimal performance.
I think preparation is absolutely key to everything in life. We do a huge amount of work behind the scenes with the whole coaching staff on our ability to be prepared for teams, not necessarily just our first game plan, but in any moments where we feel that essentially we go into every game with a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And if plan A isn't working, we're going to bounce to plan B pretty quickly, and maybe by the second half we'll even be in plan C. So I think preparation is absolutely critical in how we train and we prepare during the week, but also tactically how we prepare for our opponents with scouts. I think how you manage players is so important. So, we obviously want to motivate at a really high level as a staff, but there's always going to be things that come up, difficult things, conversations that we have to navigate. And I think one of the most important things that we've really been brought into as a staff, and something that I've always believed in my whole career, is you have to give players the ability to be authentic. And, we had a very deep and meaningful conversation this morning about Black Lives Matter. And we have a very diverse group. And I think it's really important that your athletes feel safe, that they feel like they have a voice and they can express themselves, and that they feel like you care. So a lot of it for me is about relationship building, understanding the person behind the player, and learning how to help them navigate some of the challenges that they face in their own individual lives. So when they step on the field, they feel comfortable, they feel like their coaches believe in them and their team is with them, and that they're prepared at such a high level that they can execute with whatever challenges they face.
I love that word, authenticity. It's a word I've been thinking about a lot lately in different things that I'm doing. And it comes through in your program. It came through at practice today in the way that you communicated with them, but also the way they were listening. I'm a big proponent of body language, and their body language was just exceptional, and it's been that way all season in games, but certainly in practice. So that was awesome to see. You mentioned tactical approach. I'm a soccer fan. I'm going to get into the nerdy conversation here, the tactical approach. But you talked about being tactically flexible, and I think this is something that you can apply outside of sports too, but it's specific to soccer as well. But having, you mentioned the plan A, plan B, plan C, and then, having a preferred approach, a preferred tactical approach. In soccer, it would be a preferred formation. Like, I love the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-3-3 or 3 at the back, whatever. But then being flexible enough to adapt to the opponent's weakness and also play to your strengths. So what is your general tactical philosophy, and then how you vary it game to game?
Well, we talk a lot about attacking and defending as a team. I think a lot of how we attack comes from how we defend. So we'll talk a lot in terms of, when we're going to close somebody down, when we want to go and pressure an opponent, we're not going to go individually and get played around. We want to hunt or defend in units across the field. So we spend a lot of time speaking about that as a group. We talk a lot about can we defend as a unit of 4, whether that is horizontally or vertically, not allowing teams to switch the point of attack. And then when we win it, we have this springboard or this platform then with lots of players around the ball to be able to break out and counterattack quickly because we have support close to the ball. So for me, I think a lot of the basis for what you do probably across multiple sports, you have to have a foundation, you have to have stability in the way that you defend and you look to win the ball, and then when you win it, how can you show sort of creative freedom? And with the group that we have, with the amount of athleticism and pace, how can we get forward really quickly? I know when I came here to LSU, I was told we didn't score a lot of goals, and then we weren't able to deliver so much in the goal scoring aspect of play last year. So it's really important to us. And with my heritage in the game, that we get forward and that we attack with numbers and that we, sort of excite not only our players in terms of the way that we play the game and express ourselves, but certainly the Tiger fans too.
We talked about last time your heritage and your background, and what I may do is for the audio version of this, tack that interview on at the end so people can hear your backstory because it's fascinating. Keeping in line with the tactical discussion, after a match is done, what are the metrics you look at besides scoreline? What are the numbers that like pop in your head? Like we created this many chances, or we had this many. What are the go-tos for you that you look at, and that's your standards that you measure by?
Every single block on the team has specific goals, and the goals are responsible for setting those goals and those standards before the game. I think it's really important that in order to create buy-in, you give them the freedom to set their own goals, both individually. I mean, obviously you have to support that vision. But I think through the education that we've been giving them over the last season or two, they've got to the point now where they're very astute and mature in terms of setting their own goals. And I think that brings a level of sort of buy-in that you can't get if you're just setting them for them. So I would say overall metrics, I think for me, you always have to earn the right to play. So 50-50s is a big one. Can you win your individual battles? Can we compete at a high level? Possession, we have to be able to retain the ball in order to create chances. For us at the moment, a big one is how many players can we get into the box? So every time we attack and we get into a service position, how many numbers can we get in the box? And I think if you look at a lot of our goals this season, you'll see that there are a lot of players in the attacking third. And then obviously, as every soccer fan wants to see, how many chances can you create and how many goals can you score?
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've talked about what you measure tactically and how you measure it. Aesthetically, if you're just watching soccer and the perfect match is on, the perfect team, the way they play, what do you want to see? What are the appealing visuals, the aesthetics, the style that you idealize and try to implement with your team?
I think the ability to move the ball quickly. We want to be a team, or any team that I've ever coached, I want to be a team that keeps possession, that moves the ball quickly through their lines. I think as with anything, when you have the ball, it's more enjoyable than when you don't. And so we talk to the players about, share the ball, give everybody a touch. Our goalkeeper, we want them to be as active with their feet as field players.
That definitely stands out. Y'all play a lot through your keeper and out of the back.
Yeah. And, Molly obviously has been exceptional at that this year. But I think if you look at Bella, you look at Jade, you look at any of our goalkeepers, it's really important to us that they're able to play with their feet. But moving the ball quickly, defending as a unit, certainly, how we are able to press teams or how we're able to sit in and occupy space, just how we work collectively as a unit in terms of our communication and the spaces that we take up. And then when we win it, just that desire to go forward and create chances, I think is really important for us, whether that is individually and your ability to take risks and break down opponents on the dribble, or whether that's your ability to combine with your teammates and flood forward with numbers and create goals. I think we're one of the highest, we have one of the highest shooting frequencies in the league at the moment. So, we tell the girls all the time, you're never going to win the raffle if you don't buy a ticket. So, certainly that's been a huge shift for us from last year to this year, is just that willingness to take shots and to put themselves in positions where they can create.
Speaking of tickets, big home game Friday, Mississippi State. I get lost in the philosophical discussion too much, so let's zoom in on that because it's the first SEC matchup. Y'all are undefeated, top 10 in the country, so there's some expectations, some anticipation. What are your expectations for Friday, both in terms of the performance, the atmosphere? What are you hoping to see from Friday from your team and the fans?
Yeah, I think the girls are riding a high at the moment. Obviously, we've got a lot of national publicity, and that's nice, but for us, it's one game at a time. We talk a lot about pressure being a privilege. People want to talk about the targets on our back now, but I think every time we step on the field, we just want to maintain our standards and our expectations. And the rest for us is just noise, and when we step on the field, as long as we uphold those goals that we set for each respective block of the defense, the midfield, the forwards, we know that we are going to maintain our performance standards. But in terms of the atmosphere and the environment overall, we lost to Mississippi State last year. So first and foremost, it's revenge. We got to get that back. It's our first home game in quite some time, our first home game since the hurricane and since the long road stretch. So we're excited to be playing in front of our fans. The hope is that we're going to pack the stands on Friday night and just create this sort of special atmosphere and give the team an opportunity to play in front of a really sort of partisan crowd and make it as hostile as we possibly can. Get those Tiger fans out chanting and just put Mississippi State in a position right from the first whistle where they understand that they're at LSU and they're not leaving here with anything else other than a really hard-fought contest. And we'll be doing our best, obviously, to make sure that's a win for us.
So a source told me that the band might be there. The source is the guy holding the camera right now. So hopefully the band gets out there. When we were in L.A. for the UCLA game, we went to an LAFC game, and they had the drums there, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. So I was thinking in my head, like, LSU could do this. Like, our fans are passionate and proud, and we can get some drums in there and get things crazy. So hopefully that's what it looks like on Friday. Nick's giving us a fist pump there. Should be exciting. I'll be there. I think the first 150 fans are going to get a scarf, right? A LSU Soccer scarf. Are we still working on that? I don't know if that's...
They are.
Okay.
And I was supposed to bring that scarf.
That's okay. We'll get a scarf. I was actually at the Guarantee Studios a second ago doing a football podcast and saw the scarf. Looks great. Last question. I'll end on this. I don't mean to put you on the spot here. I apologize. It's the question I get asked on Twitter all the time, and if I didn't ask it, I would get killed. And Aaron's already rolling his eyes.
Oh, no.
Are y'all going to sell the kits?
I want to sell the kits. I want to buy the kits so badly. I think if we keep winning and the success comes, then I don't think they'll be able to tell us we can't, right? So I think that for us at the moment, the scarves are going to be there on Friday night. It's youth night, first 150 through the gate, get an LSU scarf. And a scarf, to me, with my background and heritage from the UK, is almost as iconic as a jersey, because that is something, that you hold above your head when you're celebrating goals or just being sort of passionate. We talk about the word passion all the time. That scarf resembles that passion for me. It's a little hotter in Louisiana.
It's not scarf weather down here, but it's the symbolic gesture.
It's a little hotter in Louisiana, so that might be something that comes as the fall season progresses. But yes, we'd love to sell the jerseys. And now that we have a new crest, I think we've generated some excitement about it. It's definitely something that I think we can sell out.
Just tell me where to send my money. I'll be the first one in line to buy one. They're beautiful, and just super excited about the success you're having, the success you're building. Super excited for Friday. Can't wait to get out there, bring the kids out. I'll definitely bring the older daughter.
She playing?
She's her season starts on Sunday, so she's doing Happy Feet Soccer, which is a local program that's a little more individualized than team soccer. I used to coach Happy Feet Soccer, so I believe very passionately in the mission, and so she'll be out there Friday cheering on the Tigers, and then hopefully out there Sunday pretending she's a Tiger when she's on the field, and then maybe in I don't know.
She can walk us out.
Oh, she'd love to do it. So we'll be there, and maybe I don't know. She's 6. Do the math in my head. 12 years from now, 13 years from now, if you need a player, I mean, you got a connection. Dad's a fan, so I don't know if that's a recruiting violation or not. I'll have to check with compliance, but I feel like she's not quite a recruitable age.
No, I think she's okay at the moment, but we might have to change her the team that she supports.
Yeah. Honestly, to save her some misery, if she doesn't want to be an Arsenal fan, I would absolutely appreciate that. Maybe you can convince her to cheer on United. They're a little more successful than the Gunners these days.
Well, no, we'd love to, obviously we want to get all the kids out. I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about is just the players getting into the community. I think we've done a lot of work in the community to lay this foundation, hopefully for a big crowd on Friday night. So definitely get the kids out there. It's youth night, and we want to leave as big of an impression as we can on sort of the future Tigers, just like your daughter. And we want these girls to be role models and mentors and women and female athletes that these young girls can look at and say, I want to be the next Tiger in 6, 8, 10 years' time.
Awesome. Can't wait for the game, Coach. Thank you for your time today. I know you got work to do to get ready for it, so we'll let you go, but appreciate your time and really looking forward to not only Friday but the rest of the season.
Awesome. Thank you. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.